Good morning. Good morning. I am so blessed to see all of you here, and so blessed to have such a great group of close friends that were here last night to start things off. Because this isn't just a Dr. Schulze thing. It's a crusade. It's a happening. It's an event. It's all part of where we're heading in the next millennium, and it's so exciting to me. So thank you for coming. I know what it takes to get here. I know the money and the time and the energy and all the people around you that say, this doesn't sound like a very good thing to do, and you know, he's probably a mad weed doctor. You got that right. And all the no's and I can'ts, but you push through that. And if I'm here to do anything this weekend, it's to help you get your inner voice, the voice of God, your energy out, to live to your fullest, to have fun and love and joy in your life, to be all that you can be without joining the army. Okay. We're going to talk now about the heart and circulatory system. When I was 11 years old, I woke up one night. My mother was screaming, and I went to see, and my dad was having a heart attack. He was in bed. He was 55 years old. And for 3 hours, she sat on the telephone trying to find a doctor. We lived in a rural area. There was a snow emergency. There was no chance anybody was going to get to our house. And for 3 hours, I sat with my dad while he was in extreme pain, gasped for breath, was drowning on his saliva, lost bladder and bowel control, cried. And after about 3 hours, he looked me right in the eye with a calm, and he said, "I'm dead," and he slumped over in my arms. That was my first experience of mortality. And only a few years after that, when I was 14, my mom dropped dead of a massive heart attack. And a few years after that, at 16, I was starting to have some problems. And I noticed that I couldn't see right. My peripheral vision came in, shortness of breath. I thought I had a toothache. Then the pain started radiating down my left arm. I finally went to the doctors, where after x-rays and stress tests and electrocardiograms and all types of pictures, they realized that I had a severely deformed heart and deformed valves in my heart. And they said that it was unlikely that I would live to be 20 years old unless I underwent major open heart surgery and stayed on drugs the rest of my life. That's how I started my journey. They convinced me of what they said was true, and I admitted myself to the hospital, where after a few weeks waiting for my surgery, it was obvious to me, what you heard this morning, that they were killing more people than they were curing. And I decided to put my pants back on very quickly and run as fast as I can away from the doctors and the hospitals. That was the beginning of my journey. I went out into the world to tell anybody what was wrong with me and to see if they could help. I asked the doctors if there was any alternatives, if I could use herbs, if I could use a food program. My Aunt Hattie, my great Aunt Hattie, she was like my grandmother, used to grind up herbs and force it down us when I was a kid. And we used to try to kick her. They tasted bad. We hated her. We called her a witch. She was an herbalist. The doctor said there was nothing that could be done. But somehow I had that voice inside that said there is another way. You know that voice? There is another way. This doesn't make sense. They're butchering people. And I told you about my friend Bob that they killed in the hospital, who had the same problem as me. So I started on my journey. And I asked everybody and anybody I ran into, what can I do to heal my heart? And the first group of people said, well, you stop eating red meat. That red meat is bad for your heart. And it sounded kind of weird because I had grown up. In my family, we were German. My parents were both from Germany, and we had blood for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and dessert, and for snacks in between. And it sounded to me like some kind of anti-German program. But I stopped the red meat and I felt a little bit better. And then someone told me that the chicken diet I was on, that there was a lot of cholesterol in chicken, and that wasn't very good for me. Stopped the chicken, went on to a fish diet, and I didn't even like fish. And eventually got off of all animal foods and became what I refer to as a ovo vegetarian, where I just ate dairy products and eggs. And I remember going into this Greasy Spoon in Rochester, New York, where I grew up, and having eggs and roasted potatoes and a milkshake. And afterwards having the worst irregular heartbeat and heart palpitations and almost not being able to walk out of this restaurant. So, although I was feeling better, I knew that there was still something wrong with the animal food that I was consuming. So at that point I became a complete vegan. This is a dumb book, you know, you can buy them at any checkout stand at a grocery store. The cholesterol content of food. Let's look at it for a minute here. Beef, pan-fried medium beef. Pan-fried, 4 ounces, 95 milligrams of cholesterol. Let's see, let's go for some fish. There's a number of different fish in here, but there's all different kinds. 4.5 ounces of fish. Generally here, 86 milligrams of cholesterol. Shockingly high, huh? Turkey, light meat turkey. Light meat, so not the really laden with cholesterol stuff. 4 ounces, 98 milligrams of cholesterol, more than hamburger. Let's go to chicken, the new light white meat here. Chicken. Light only, light white, no skin, 102 milligrams of cholesterol. Kind of shocking, isn't it? Because we've been sold this bill of goods that chicken and turkey and all that, and you look here, we got turkey and chicken, 4 ounces, having more than fatty old greasy cow beef. The reality is all animal foods are laden with cholesterol, and cholesterol hurts your heart. And I'm going to talk about why in a minute. There's a whole section in here of vegetables, and I find it redundant that they even put them in here because they all say 0. Mushrooms, 0. Mustard greens, 0. Tofu, 0. Why did they even bother? There's 0 cholesterol in any fruit, vegetable, nut, seed, grain, legume, sprout. There's none. I don't even know why they included it. They just should have said the cholesterol content of animal food. No sense in putting tofu or broccoli in here. That's the program that I moved over to, was a vegan food program 29 years ago, and I found that my heart rapidly got better. So I had a rapid and gigantic change in my food program. As far as my elimination program, I was really constipated, and you heard about it. In fact, in school, I didn't want to go to the bathroom so much that I became very constipated, and one day, really constipated, I started developing heart palpitations and went to the nurse's office, and that's when they first diagnosed me as heart disease. I had to learn how to clean my bowels out, and I did, and that made a big change in my heart. Movement, I didn't move much as a kid. Then I spent a lot of years in the martial arts and moving and learning how exercise helped my heart. And my emotions, you know, I had a lot of anger about my parents' death. I didn't, you know what I said this morning? That didn't come to me at 16. It took a few years of work to figure that one out. I had to begin loving people, loving myself. The number one first physical thing that hurts our heart is food. Let's get that straight before we get into the herbal cures. Now, we talk a lot about food at the beginning crusade. It was the biggest risk to my patients. It was going to kill them the quickest, what was they were eating. If you add up all the types of death there are, from AIDS to cancer, to airline crashes, to drowning, suicide, electrocution, drug overdose, liver cell death, kidneys failing, whatever it is, you add them all up together, they do not equal the amount of people that die from heart death in America today. The number one cause of death in America is iatrogenic disease. I estimate over 1 million people a year in America die at the hands of their doctors or as a side effect to an outpatient surgery or a pharmaceutical drug. Well over 1 million. But running second is heart disease. Now, most people will say heart disease is first. Those are the doctors who don't like to talk about the 1 million that they killed. I've studied the statistics of heart disease quite a bit. If you want, you can order a CD-ROM from the CDC, the Center of Disease Control. It's quite amazing to see the amount of people dying of what diseases there are around the country. What astounded me the most was that of the 1 million people that died last year of heart death, that 990,000 of them died from cholesterol and fat blocking important arteries to their heart, the coronary arteries, the carotid artery to the brain, or other arteries causing strokes, arteries to the lungs and kidneys, causing lung and kidney failure. And only 10,000 of that 1 million was from other causes. So 99% of heart death is directly related to what is on the end of your fork, because there is no cholesterol in some foods and much cholesterol in other foods. So the first thing to heal your heart, anybody with heart disease, and unless my patients did this, I would not take them on, is they have to become a vegan, period. If you are eating animal foods and you have high blood pressure, hypertension, or you have heart disease, you're on the wrong program. Of course, I made them stop eating animal food for every other disease, but we'll talk about that in the other categories. Animal fat clogs up your arteries, scars them, clogs them up, and it stops the flow of blood, and you die. You have a heart attack and you die. 1 million people a year are dying from a disease of the fork in America. And you cannot talk about herbs for the heart unless you mention that. Remember, we have to stop doing what's killing us. Let's talk about the system. Oh, let's use red. This is your heart. And these are the tubes. Here, I like this one. This is your brain. Heart pumps blood to the brain. This may be your penis. This is mine. And some people have said that the blood pumps there before it goes to the brain, and what little is left over trickles up to the brain. I don't know. Okay. I know it's really okay. All right, stop high. Just wanted to see if anybody was snoozing after lunch. This system of a pump and arteries going to other areas of the body is a pressurized closed system in a way very similar to the tube from here to here. It's a pressurized system. All heart disease is really caused by that system's pressure being off, or hypertension. We can put a lot of other names on it. But if you're talking about hypertension, you're talking about the pressure going up in this closed system. We have a pump here that is pumping blood through pipes. The pressure is going up. If we're talking about arterial sclerosis, we're talking about a hardening of the arteries because they've been damaged by the pressure going up. If we're talking about atherosclerosis, we're talking about arteries that have been damaged by the amount of fat that's stuck to the side of them. If we're talking about angina, we're talking about pain in the heart because we can't get enough blood to the heart because the arteries are clogged. If we're talking about a heart attack, we're talking about the heart dying because it can't get enough blood. It's a pressurized system between the heart and every other area of the body. The bottom line is in a closed system with a pump and pipes. I don't care if this is your swimming pool or your heart. You're operating at a certain pressure. It's not like, in some ways you can think of it as a motor in a car engine where it has higher pressures and lower pressures, but you have a pressurized system. If I am pumping through this system water, and we are pumping at 10 psi, or 10 pounds per square inch, what do you think will happen if instead of pumping water, I start pumping molasses? Same volume, same closed system. Or how about mud? Same amount, same closed system. The pressure goes up. So the number one reason for the pressure going up in this system, causing high blood pressure, arterial sclerosis, heart attacks, whatever, damage to the system, is the viscosity of the liquid gets thicker. Okay? Viscosity of the liquid gets thicker. And that causes the pressure to go up. That will hurt you and cause heart disease and can kill you. With us, it isn't mud that causes our viscosity get thicker, and it isn't molasses. It's cholesterol and fat. Another reason for the pressure going up is the reduction in the diameter of the pipe. In any closed system, pumping a fluid at a certain pressure, if you keep the same amount of fluid in that system, but you reduce the diameter of the pipe, the pressure goes up. So this is the second reason for the pressure going up. The reduction of the diameter of the pipes. There are a number of reasons that an artery will lose its size and diameter, but the main one is cholesterol and fat plaquing up on the artery, so now you have a smaller hole with the same exact volume of fluid being pumped through, but it has to be pumped through at a much higher pressure now. The third reason you can have a major pressure increase in this system, the arteries could stay the same size, the viscosity could stay the same, but the volume of the liquid increases. If you have more liquid in there, but the same size pipe, the pressure goes up. And that is usually due to the kidneys or the heart not pumping enough to the kidneys. The kidneys are sluggish. Let's not let animal fat off the hook, because most of the time the kidneys are sluggish because they're clogged with the residues of animal fat. but also urea and other waste. The protein in animal fat gets calcified in the kidneys. So we want to talk about how to fix these three problems, because these are the three reasons: the increase in the viscosity means increase in pressure. A decrease in the size of the pipe means an increase in pressure, and an increase in the volume of the liquid means an increase in pressure. All these things increase in pressure. Thicker blood, pressure goes up. Harder to pump that mud around the body. The size of the pipe goes down, pressure goes up. Anytime you squeeze anything, the pressure goes up. Volume gets bigger, now we're expanding, pressure goes up. These are the three major causes of heart disease. You don't have to go much beyond these with anyone. Let's take the first one, the viscosity. How are we going to get this liquid that is like mud now thinner? The average cholesterol level in the People's Republic of China is 122, where they eat very little animal food, mostly rice and vegetables. They actually, on the average, eat a pound a week per family of 4. That's this much in a meal. That's why when you buy traditional Chinese food, you go, where's the meat? It isn't in there. America, our average cholesterol level is 200, and we have the highest incidence of coronary artery disease in the world because of that. Our blood is too fat, and we say that 200 is okay. We have the highest incidence of heart death of any country in the world, and we say 200 cholesterol levels okay. We say if it goes over that, you're in the danger zone. But you have 122 average cholesterol level in the People's Republic of China and very little incidence of heart disease. Now, I had patients that had 200 and 300 and 400, 500 cholesterol levels. And I can assure you that I got all of their cholesterol levels, meaning I thinned the viscosity of their blood greatly, down to 150 or 160 in 30 days, every one of them. I had a man come to see me with a 600 level cholesterol, and I had him down to 150 in 30 days. I had one program for doing that. We have some herbs we'll add later. Stop them from eating cholesterol. If you want your cholesterol level to go down, you have to stop putting it in your mouth. We could use these again if we have to. Thank you. We could use those, but you have to stop eating cholesterol, and there's only one source of cholesterol, and that's anything that had a face on it, or it came from something with a face on it. I had a husband and wife team come to see me. She was 600 and he was 800, owners of a movie studio here in town. I had one lady come to me with a cholesterol level of 1,500 and triglycerides of 9,000. That was my record. And in 2 months, she was down to 150 cholesterol level, and I have all her blood workups. One of these days, we'll publish that. I don't care how high your cholesterol is. If you stop eating it, your cholesterol level will go down. Now, what else can we use to get this viscosity thinner? A great herb is red clover. Red clover blossoms, the flower of the red clover, you'll see back at the ABP. contain a number of substances, coumarin, dicumarol, coumaric acid. They thin your blood in a number of ways, but one of the ways is to stop the utilization of vitamin K that your liver makes, which is a blood clotting factor. But they will thin your blood. Other species of clover have more of this in it, but red clover is the safe one that you can use from now till the end of your life to thin your blood. This would be like an herbal aspirin. People take an aspirin, I can't believe it, to thin their blood. There's so many easy ways to do it. And one of the ways that red clover works is by the vitamin K utilization. It thins your blood. The other power herb, this is red clover. The other power herb is garlic. Garlic increases your high-density lipoproteins. Your high-density lipoproteins are substances that go from your liver out into your bloodstream, surround cholesterol, and put it in their truck and drive it back to your liver to get out. It decreases your low-density lipoproteins, your LDLs, which take fat and deposit it out in your blood. So garlic, by increasing your HDLs and lowering your LDLs, essentially removes fat from your bloodstream. It also decreases the new one called VLDLs, which just means very low-density lipoprotein. Garlic is used as a drug to do this in many countries of the world. It's an official drug in most countries in Asia, prescribed for hypertension. It's just that we won't prescribe herbs in this country medically. Why would anybody go to the bother when you can take your bulb of garlic home, stick a hole in the ground, put a clove in, and grow your own? That's what this movement is all about. I don't want to be making herb products for the next 50 years. I want to go down to the beach there and hang. This is about all of you learning natural medicine, which you can grow in your own backyard and mix up in your kitchen. Yeah. Yeah, I know you do. They're the best blood thinners. There are other herbs that are used to decrease the viscosity of the blood, to thin the blood. But these two work the best. They're the dynamic duo. To increase the diameter of the pipes, we were talking up here. Okay, that's the, remember, you have to stop eating what makes your blood thick. Animals. You have to begin doing something that makes your blood thin. Lots of liquids, the food program, everything we talk about, but these are two specific herbs that will change the viscosity very quickly. Now we're on the diameter of the pipe. We have to stop doing what shrinks the size of this pipe, which causes the pressure to go up. And now, of course, we talked about the animal foods that deposit on that pipe that clog it. But there are other things that reduce the size of that pipe. Arteries, a vein is more of a hollow tube. An artery has a muscular wall. That's the difference, really, between veins and arteries. And that muscle can expand or contract when it needs to. It can move, that artery. When you take things in your body that make that muscle contract, you shrink the diameter of the pipe and cause the pressure to go up. So the first thing we have to do with heart disease is stop causing the arterial musculature to contract, making that pipe smaller. One of the main things that causes that muscle to contract in the human body is caffeine. It causes it to contract. Another one is nicotine. That's why a nice cup of coffee and a cigarette can relax you to death. And it has for many people. It's immediate contraction of that arterial wall. Around the world, there is publicity in the medical journals on the dangers of coffee. Now, I know in America, it is now the hippest place to hang out and the hippest thing to do. But there are volumes written on coffee increasing your risk of cancer. And statistically, it is known in medical schools and universities around the world that coffee drinkers have double the risk of having a heart attack than those who don't drink coffee. So it jerks that muscle down, raises your blood pressure up, and can immediately give you a stroke or a heart attack. The #1 cause of death in America. Do you see that on the signs in the coffee shops? Do you see that on the Starbucks cup? She said yes. Well, you're seeing things the rest of us aren't. Oh, not yet. Okay, yeah. Yeah, well, it is. Because some people need to do that. But not when we're talking about heart disease. It has other uses, and I used it in my clinic and I used it in my formulas, because sometimes you want to do that and some of the other effects of coffee. Now, I mentioned nicotine, another alkaloid like caffeine that tightens that down, and coffee and cigarettes are two of the worst. And imagine if you're on a high diet of animal foods, the viscosity of your blood is thick, your cholesterol level's 300, you sit down for a puff and a cup of Java and boom! That's the last thing you're going to see. Like that description? I do too. What the heck? Dean Ornish did a great study, Dr. Dean Ornish. And Dr. Dean Ornish was kind of a hip MD and a cardiologist, and he wanted to see what would happen with his heart patients who had plaqued arteries, high blood pressure, high blood fat, and were scheduled for coronary bypass surgery if he put them on an extreme or a radical program. It was a real radical program. I thought it was lightweight compared to my clinic. He made these people become vegetarians. I do not think that's radical. He made them exercise for 30 or 40 minutes a day. I don't think that's radical. He made them, now this is pretty radical, relax for 30 minutes a day and breathe. Okay? And what he saw was a reduction in their coronary artery disease. This plaque actually came off and their arteries opened up and cleaned out again. He was the first one to prove that and show that. We all knew that. I had patients with such coronary artery disease, they couldn't walk, they could hardly breathe, they could hardly move, that in 2 or 3 months were healed without any bypass surgeries, cleaned out their arteries using this program. But Dean Ornish proved it. He has pictures of it, angiograms of it. So we want to stop taking things in our body like coffee and cigarettes that contract those muscles on the artery. Any type of what we might call an amphetamine or a diet pill or speed contracts that. Nicotine, caffeine, dexedrine, benzedrine. A lot of the alkaloids that make you have energy, this false energy. You know, I'm sorry, but when I go to look at places like these coffee houses, and I see them before they're open and the people outside, it looks to me like a junkie's crack house. These people are mad, angry, shaking, and they're like pissed. They want this place to open. And then once they get their fix, they're blissed out. I mean, this is just a legalized abuse of any drug or chemical or herb, even coffee. Coffee is what we call a medicinal herb and should be used sparingly for medicinal things. It was never designed to be a daily drink. So we have to stop doing the things that contract that artery, but we also have to clean out the fat and the plaque. We have some beautiful herbs that come back in to do that. And garlic is like a scraper in there. It not only reduces the amount of fat that goes into your bloodstream, but it actually cuts away at this plaquing in the arteries, the chemicals in garlic, and open your pipes bigger. Cayenne will have an immediate effect at dilating an artery to the point where I have had people having heart attacks and strokes in my office, and the cayenne brought them out of it immediately. It's our first aid herb for heart attacks, strokes, anything of that nature. Cayenne tincture, cayenne powder, cayenne pepper. I had a man who wrote me a Christmas card about his experience with his wife. He had a new RV and he was going to take a trip with his wife, and they got in the RV, and in a day she had chest pains, was hurting. Rushed her to the hospital, and sure enough, she had coronary artery blockage. They wanted to do at least coronary bypass surgery, possibly even put her on a heart transplant list. He said in his letter to me, well, we've been buying all these Dr. Schulze books and tapes and newsletters and herbs. It's about time we start to use them now. And he said he went home, and the first thing he did is he bought a quart of vodka and some fresh chili peppers and made her a cayenne tincture. And he said immediately on administering it, her pain went away. 3 days later, she had no pain, and a few months later, her heart was better and her coronary arteries were cleaned up. Amazing, isn't it? And he wrote that in his Christmas card to me, and I couldn't figure out why he was putting, and contact Dr. Schulze at the American Botanical Pharmacy, 1-800-HERB-DOC, buy the cayenne tincture, buy the cayenne powder, until I realized this was the Christmas card he sent to everybody, to all his relatives and all his friends. It was amazing, and he had it in red ink on a color printer too. And I realized I just got a generic Christmas card from this guy. I got 1,000 stories like that. Cayenne increases the circulation, but it's emergency because say you have someone that has that high animal fat diet, and then they went to the coffee house and got a cup of coffee and sat down and had a cigarette and dropped over. You can reverse the coffee and the cigarette immediately with cayenne pepper by dilating that artery. And also, even if it's a plaque or a clot, it will dilate it enough so you'll get a sufficient supply of blood. Ginger root also works, but cayenne is much stronger and faster. So again, the stop and the start for the viscosity and the size of the pipe. The third category here, the volume of liquid. To get the volume of liquid decreased immediately, we have to use diuretic herbs. And a few of my favorite diuretic herbs, we're going to talk about this more when we get into the kidneys and urinary tract, are uva ursi and juniper berry, because they are both not only diuretic, but they're both disinfecting, which means they'll destroy bacteria in the urinary tract. And that will reduce the volume of liquid. With any heart problem, there is an immediate herb to start with. Now, we talked about the immediate herb for the liver. No matter what's going on, even if the person's still a drunk or a drug addict, or still is filled with hate and rage and fear, or still is consuming pharmaceutical drugs, whatever, we want to get the protector in. Remember the herb that protected, coated, and bound to the liver cells and kept them from being hurt or damaged anymore? Milk thistle, thank you. Well, we have another one of those for the heart, and it's called hawthorn. And traditionally, we use the berry. Nowadays, people are saying that there's the same chemistry in the flower and to some degree in the leaf, but I have never used them, and the berry works incredible. But if that's all I had, I would use those. And I put those in our tonic now, because people only use the berry, and the berry works brilliantly. There are chemicals, plant chemicals, phytochemicals in the berry, like flavonoids. Some people are starting to call them cardiac flavonoids that bind to your heart cells and protect them from damage. Amazingly do that. Now, there's been a lot of research done on this subject, and they have done a tremendous amount of animal torture on this subject around the world. And herbalists doing animal torture is about as bad as it gets. But I will tell you some of their findings, which I already knew. They took many types of animals. They opened up their chest. They put a valve on their coronary arteries and turned that valve down till they gave the dogs, cats, or whatever, heart attacks. They found that the animals that they had given previous hawthorn berry extracts to could go longer with less blood and oxygen to the heart, way longer, before they had heart attacks. And afterwards, when they opened the blood supply back up, the heart was not damaged. In the ones that did not have hawthorn extract, the heart was damaged, and it was a very little constriction of the blood supply before they had a heart attack. Does that make sense? So hawthorn protects your heart cells from damage and lets them survive on less blood and oxygen. Anybody with arterial sclerosis, atherosclerosis, hypertension, anybody with angina pectoris or heart disease of any size, shape, or form should be on hawthorn berry until they are out of the closet, or maybe for the rest of their life. And that's another big protector. And this is that protect formula that I'm developing. Milk thistle for the liver, hawthorn for the heart. Because you can give this to Uncle Harry even though he's still on the wrong program. Hopefully keep him around longer. Obviously, we do not in any way, shape, or form advocate any type of animal experimentation. It's ludicrous. It has nothing to do with humans. It's horrible torture. And it's one of the things we're going to have to leave with this last century. Please. Yeah. I speak to a lot of vegetarian groups who are shocked to find out that although they do not eat animals, that their prescription drugs are made from animals, or even their vitamins are made from animals. And so we try to take that all the way. I just don't believe that we're going to get to our spiritual higher self by torturing, maiming, mutilating, and killing puppy dogs, rabbits, and kitty cats. What about when the heart is beating in an irregular fashion? We've talked about the size of the pipes, the viscosity of the blood, and the amount of blood within this closed system. But sometimes we have more of a neurological disorder where the heart is beating irregularly. Sometimes we call that cardiac arrhythmia, again meaning irregular heartbeat, tachycardia, speeded up heartbeat. Okay. The two ways we fix that are what? Stopping doing what's making it happen and then beginning new things to fix it. There are a lot of things that make that happen. Woman came to see me in my clinic with a regular heartbeat. They had put her on beta blockers. Beta blockers, let me draw a picture. You have nerve impulse sites on your heart as part of the heart's electrical system. And when that impulse site is stimulated, your heart beats. So we'll start again with your heart. And you have these sites. And often they are referred to as beta cells. One of the big cardiac drugs today is called beta blockers, where they even have calcium channel blockers. These essentially anesthetize these receptor sites. For some reason, your heart is beating in a regular fashion. I experienced a lot of that. When that came on, the next thing I know is I couldn't see, and the next thing I know I passed out in the grocery store, in the lawn, wherever I was. The first thing you have to do is stop doing what will cause that. And then there are many herbs we're going to talk about to heal that. But this woman came to see me, and she was just put on beta blockers. Now, beta blockers have one horrendous side effect. If you stop taking them, you die. They'll kill you immediately. You can't just stop taking a beta blocker. They're a very toxic, very strong, very liver-killing drug. They put her on beta blockers. And this was very scary. I had a lot of patients. I had to wean off beta blockers. But I started asking her about, when did you notice your irregular heart beating starting? And we got down, sometimes you have to pry a little bit and become a good natural healing detective and ask a lot of questions. And it came about that about 2 years ago, prior to the heart, she had really bad sinus infections and went to the doctor. And I said, well, what did the doctor give you? And they gave her a lot of ephedrine type products, which you'll find in all sinus preparations that dry up and decongest the sinuses. But ephedrine is also a beta cell stimulator. It stimulates these cells, and it can cause cardiac arrhythmia. They did not take her off these, but they now included these. So now they got her heart beta cells being stimulated, but she has a regular heartbeat, but she has to take her sinus medication, so now she's on beta blockers. I mean, look at what we're doing with people and creating this crazy chemistry. And this wasn't the only time this happened. Often the disease that a person has was caused by the pharmaceutical or surgical procedure that this person received 2 years prior. Once you start going down that medical road, it's like a stack of dominoes going over, and you end up on a dead-end street with no money and very bad health. Yeah! Thank you, thank you. Oh, I know you, troublemaker. Remember, you have to stop what's making you sick first. There are a lot of things that cause irregular heartbeat. Sugar causes cardiac arrhythmia, tachycardia. Coffee, again, coffee's a bad one for the heart. My dad drank about 2 pots of coffee a day, along with 3 packs of cigarettes, 4 cigars, 4 pipes. And each cup of coffee, he put 3 spoons of sugar in. And some real thick animal fat cream. I'm amazed the human body can even survive that. Think about it. And that was just his coffee program, right? His coffee and cigarette program. Is it surprising looking back that he died at 55 of heart disease? Not at all. Black tea causes irregular heartbeats. Chocolate causes tachycardia, irregular heartbeats. Drugs, sinus medications, cold preparations, diet pills, a lot of over-counter the drugs cause irregular heartbeat. I think that's so you can have cardiac arrhythmia, so you go see a cardiac specialist who will then put you on a drug that if you stop it, you die immediately. What kind of sales tool is that? That's pretty good. There are some herbs that are very, very, very strong regulators for the heartbeat. I never moved much towards strong herbs in my clinic. And many of you know why. Because they're not necessary if you're willing to change your lifestyle. Strong herbs, like strong medicines, are for those that will not take responsibility for their life and make any other changes. If you're willing to stop your animal foods and get the juicer out and take your cholesterol level from 400 down to 150, if you're willing to start exercising, and if you're willing to, God forbid, love yourself and love others, you're not going to need to take the powerhouse drugs or the powerhouse herbs. But we might mention one of the most powerful herbs for regulating the heartbeat is digitalis lanata, which is used to make a very powerful heart drug called digitalis or digitoxin. There's a number of brand names for it. I'm not familiar with all of them because they change them all the time because people think it's very bad, and so they just put a new name on it. Digitalis is also that plant that we talked about. That company poisoned everybody with their bowel products with and caused heart trouble with. Digitalis is a strong regulator of the heartbeat, but it's very strong. And you can make a tincture of it while you're doing your other programs, but I never used it in the clinic. Another one is lily of the valley. Some people have used with great success for regulating the heartbeat. Another one that is very similar to digitalis is oleander. And that grows all over Southern California here and around the freeways. Has a very bitter taste to it. People have said, oh gosh, don't have it on your property, you'll poison yourself or the kids. Eat the stuff, try it. I've broken the leaves off and you put it in your mouth. Believe me, you're not going to have lunch there. Nature is very safe. The only time people poison themselves with herbs in nature is when they don't taste them. They take mushrooms that if they tasted them, they'd know that they were very strong, but they put them in some beef sugary stew. How can you taste that? Only time I've heard of people poisoning themselves with oleander is when they took the stalks of oleander and roasted hot dogs on them over a fire, and the juice of the oleander went down into the hot dog. Well, how can you taste anything with a bunch of animal eyes, esophagus, testicles, and uteruses ground up with a lot of food coloring and salt on the end of a stick? Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't know that's what a hot dog was? So, you know, these herbs aren't out to get you. They're all medicinal and they're all helpers, and oleander has strong cardiac phytochemicals in it, very similar to digitalis. In fact, if you find the Merck manual from the 1880s and 90s, you'll find oleander in there with digitalis used as a cardiac drug to regulate the heartbeat. But I don't use that power. Because when you add in the garlic and the food program and the other things, you just don't need that kind of power. Herbalists use this, but there are a lot of herbalists that that's all they use is herbs. Just because you're an herbalist doesn't mean you're a natural healer. I like motherwort. It's in the mint family. And motherwort is a wonderful plant for regulating the heartbeat. It worked for all my patients. But it's just not so strong that if you took too many cups of tea, it would kill you. There are very strong medicinal herbs out there. Motherwort's in the mint family, great herb for regulating the heartbeat. There's a cactus that works for regulation of the heartbeat called Cactus grandiflorus. Also a great herb for regulating the heartbeat. Should be part of your heart tonic for the arrhythmia, for the palpitations. For stimulating the blood flow to get more blood through your kidneys. Not only would you use diuretics, but you can use other herbs to push more blood around your body. Often, as we get older, and the smaller blood vessels rust up, your circulatory system becomes smaller, and the pipe size is smaller, and the system is smaller. One of the ways you can reduce the pressure immediately is by getting blood everywhere. And the two greatest herbs to do that are cayenne and ginger, both circulatory stimulants. Cayenne seems to, in my clinical experience, go to the heart first and kind of work out from there, where ginger goes to the extremities and works back. So together, they work beautifully at increasing the circulation to your hands and your feet. If you have cold hands and feet, here's the miracle cure right here. But increasing your circulation in your whole body, even to your head and your brain. Even if you go to a ski resort, they'll sell you these powders that you put in your gloves or your boots. It's cayenne and ginger. You sprinkle it in, you don't even have to put it in your mouth. Just sprinkle it in your socks, and you'll be dancing. There are other heart stimulants, but remember, they can reduce the size of this artery. But you sometimes have people that have maybe what we might call a worn out or tired heart, or we might call it congestive heart failure, where their heart is tired and it's not pumping the blood anywhere. And that can be the time that we want to use the stimulants like the coffee or caffeine-containing herbs like coffee, guarana. We might want to use ephedra as a stimulant for the circulatory system. But for the majority of the reasons people have heart disease, those are not indicated. But those are indicated for people that have a weak heart, that isn't beating strong, creating enough pressure, so much that they're starting to get edema from the kidneys not working. That's a time with diuretics we may want to use what I call the heart stimulants of caffeine or coffee, guarana, and ephedrine from ephedra. Definitely not for aneurysm, because an aneurysm is a weakness, possibly a genetic weakness in the wall of an artery that could burst. And if it bursts and it's in your brain or in a major artery like your aorta, it can kill you immediately. So the main thing for aneurysm, the first thing is heart protection, Hawthorne, always. Then juice fasting. I mean, if you're talking, you have a time bomb. And we'll talk about the Incurables program later, but you don't have any time to fool around. We're not talking about becoming a vegetarian now over a period of 30 days, but if you have an aneurysm, you got to stop eating everything. Get the juicer out, liquids, watch that blood pressure lower, that cholesterol level dive bomb down. Increase the circulation with the cayenne and ginger. And then build the strength of that system with nutrition. Let's see here. Let's bring some heart tonic around. I'd like you all to have some of this. First herb in the largest proportion, hawthorn berry. We got to protect the heart before we do anything else. Red clover to thin the blood. Cactus grandiflorus to regulate the heartbeat. Motherwort to regulate the heartbeat. Garlic to increase the HDLs and lower the LDLs to lessen the viscosity or thickness of the blood. Ginger and cayenne for the circulation. When you put a formula together like that, you will regulate the heartbeat, protect the heart, thin the blood, increase the size of the arteries, and increase the circulation to get more liquid out. These are the herbs that I used in my clinic to create heart miracles. In my Malibu clinic, a man was late for his appointment. I went in and talked to my assistant and said, "Have you seen this guy?" You know, it was like 15 minutes. And I'm excited. I'm excited about herbs and natural healing and helping people free themselves from medicine. And I said, "Where is this guy?" She goes, "I don't know." She goes, "But his car's been out there for like 10 minutes in the driveway." So I walked out and he was dead. He had died behind the wheel of his car. He had a massive heart attack. And when I saw it, I just reached in and grabbed him and yanked him out through the window. And as I got his head, I had my cayenne tincture, because when you run a clinic, cayenne on one side, lobelia on the other. You learn the power of those two herbs. And I started putting dropperfuls of cayenne tincture in his mouth. Now, he was gray. If you've ever seen someone that has been dead, they're gray. He was gray. I squirted the cayenne tincture in his mouth, and when it got in his mouth, his face turned red. He was dead, and his face turned red. And then as I yanked him out the way, all the way out of the car, I started CPR. We brought him back to life, and he went into the hospital immediately, and I was shocked that he had no heart damage or no brain damage. The doctors asked me what I did, and I told them, and they were a bit perplexed, although they had heard of this, because it does go back in folklore, and of course in the Old West, and people around the world have used this for emergency treatment. But I was amazed that the cayenne had actually dilated his arteries and increased circulation in his face and head before his heart was pumping. Blood was moving. Yahoo! I mean, that's a powerful herb. I'm holding the mic. It's L is for the way you look at me. O is for the only one. You're a good singer as well. V is for the very extra. Oh, see, I don't need a lot of compliment to get going. Okay.
Well, I was just sharing with Dr. Schulze that I was visiting my grandfather.
Can we hear that? Okay. Yeah. Dunk it in the tea first. Put your lips in this.
Okay. I was just visiting my grandfather. Prior to the visit, I had been told that his blood sugar was about 203.
Blood pressure.
Right, excuse me.
It's okay.
Blood pressure was 203 over in the high 90s. And so I went with superfood, cayenne tincture, and
that's
the heart
bursting
formula.
level, by the way.
Right.
That's really dangerous.
Right. We were concerned definitely of stroke, something of this nature. So I arrived, went and spent some time with him that evening and told him what he needed to do. I gave him high doses of the heart formula.
Great.
Especially. And the very next morning, both of the figures were cut in half. And we kept retaking his blood pressure to make sure that it was correct, because we were expecting something gradual.
Yeah.
And we were all quite shocked. My mother and father, by the way, they order very high volume amounts of all your products as well. But my grandfather, he's just been a bit resistant.
Yeah.
And so he did take these, and he had those excellent results.
It's amazing, isn't
Once
it?
again.
Oh, thank you.
Once again.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. I love you all. Thank you for coming. I'm going to take my socks. See you tomorrow.